I lost my wife Julie, 42F, in a car accident 2 years ago. I, 45M, was left to raise our daughter Sally, 6F, alone. Julie meant everything to me, and her death left a huge void in our lives. My father-in-law Rowan, 68M, was devastated too. He had already lost his wife to cancer 5 years before Julie's death, so losing his only child broke him completely. Julie and I met at a friend's wedding where she was the wedding planner and I worked as a software developer. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Julie was an amazing person, creative, kind, and full of life. She ran her own wedding planning business from home while also taking care of Sally. She balanced everything perfectly, something I'm still trying to figure out how to do. The car accident happened on a rainy evening. Julie was driving back from meeting a client when a drunk driver hit her car. She died instantly. The drunk driver walked away with minor injuries. That night changed everything for us. Sally was only 4 then, too young to fully understand what happened, but old enough to keep asking when mommy was coming home. The first year after Julie's death was incredibly difficult. I had to manage my full-time job as a software developer, take care of Sally, and deal with my grief all at once. I would wake up at 5 a.m. to get Sally's lunch ready, drop her at daycare by 7 a.m., work until 4 p.m., pick her up, make dinner, help with her homework, and put her to bed. The cycle was exhausting but kept me going. Rowan visited us frequently during that time. He lived about an hour away and would often stay for dinner or spend weekends with us. He was retired from his job as a high school principal and had plenty of free time. Sally loved having her grandfather around, and I appreciated the support. He would tell Sally stories about Julie as a child, which helped keep her mother's memory alive. 6 months ago, Rowan showed up at our door with 2 suitcases. It was a Sunday evening, and Sally had just gone to bed. He said he was worried about me being alone and wanted to help with Sally. He talked about how the house seemed too quiet whenever he visited and how Sally needed more family around. At first, I welcomed the idea. Having another adult in the house seemed like it would make things easier. The problem started gradually. Rowan began making small changes around the house without asking me. First, it was just moving some furniture around. He claimed certain arrangements would work better or look more like how Julie would have wanted it. Then he started moving our family photos. He took down recent pictures of me and Sally and replaced them with old photos of Julie as a child. When I objected, he said Sally needed to see more images of her mother around the house. Then came the changes to our garden. Julie was passionate about gardening and had created a beautiful backyard space. She spent years perfecting her rose garden, and it was her pride and joy. Every spring, those roses would bloom in beautiful shades of pink and red. Sally and I maintained it after Julie died. It was our way of keeping her memory alive. Rowan decided to improve it by digging up Julie's flower beds and planting vegetables instead. He said it was more practical to grow food than flowers. I came home from work one day to find Julie's rose bushes completely gone. He had pulled them all out and planted tomatoes and cucumbers instead. When I confronted him, he said the roses reminded him too much of Julie and it was too painful to look at them. I was heartbroken. Those roses were the last living thing Julie had nurtured. The financial issues began about 3 months ago. Since Rowan moved in, I gave him access to my credit card for grocery shopping and household expenses. Initially, it worked well. He would buy groceries, pay for Sally's school supplies, and handle small household repairs. Then I started noticing large purchases at home improvement stores. He bought new patio furniture because the old set was not comfortable enough. He purchased expensive garden tools because the ones Julie left weren't professional grade. He ordered custom curtains for every room because the existing ones didn't match his vision for the house. Last month, he spent $3,000 on an elaborate playhouse for Sally without consulting me. It's a beautiful structure with 2 stories, windows, and even a small porch. While Sally loves it, I couldn't afford such an expensive purchase. When I brought this up, Rowan got defensive. He said I was being ungrateful for his help with Sally. He mentioned how he drives her to school every morning, helps with homework, cooks dinner most nights, and takes her to weekend activities. The situation got worse when he started commenting on my work hours. He complained that I wasn't spending enough time with Sally, even though I always make sure to be home for dinner and dedicate my weekends to her. He started scheduling activities during my work hours, doctor appointments, school events, playdates, and then telling Sally that I chose not to participate. When I explained that I needed to work to support us, he made comments about how Julie managed to run her business from home. Recently, I've been thinking about asking Rowan to move back to his house. It's a comfortable 3-bedroom home that he owns outright. He has friends in his neighborhood and was active in his local community before moving in with us. He was part of a book club, volunteered at the local library, and played golf twice a week. Now he spends all his time hovering around our house, making changes and monitoring my parenting. However, every time I try to bring up the subject, he changes the topic or makes comments about how lonely he was living alone. He talks about how empty his house feels without his wife and daughter, and how being with Sally is the only thing that brings him joy. I feel guilty even thinking about asking him to leave. I know he's still grieving for Julie, we all are. But his presence is becoming suffocating. He treats me more like a tenant in my own home than the homeowner. He makes decisions about house maintenance, Sally's activities, and even meal planning without consulting me. When I try to assert myself, he brings up Julie and how she would have wanted things done differently. I feel stuck. I don't want to hurt Rowan, he's my only connection to Julie besides Sally. Julie loved her father dearly and would want me to take care of him. But I also need to regain control of my life and home. Sally seems happy having her grandfather around all the time, and I worry about how she would handle another big change in her life. I don't know how to address this situation without causing more pain to everyone involved. Has anyone dealt with a similar situation? How do I handle this without damaging my relationship with my father-in-law or upsetting Sally? Update 1: Things have gotten much worse since my last post. I need to share what happened because the situation has become unbearable. I started dating Sally's class teacher, Brittany, 38F, about a month ago. We kept it quiet initially, not because we were ashamed, but because we wanted to make sure it was serious before telling anyone, especially Sally. Brittany and I grew closer during parent-teacher conferences. She was always kind to Sally, understanding her situation and helping her deal with her grief in school. One day after a conference, we ended up talking for hours about life, loss, and healing. Brittany lost her brother in a similar accident, so she understood my pain. Over time, our conversations became longer, and we started meeting for coffee after school hours. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe again. Brittany didn't try to replace Julie, she respected her memory and understood that Sally and I would always love her. She just offered companionship and understanding, something I hadn't realized I desperately needed. However, everything changed when Rowan found out. He saw us having coffee together at a local cafe last week. We were sitting in a corner booth, just talking and laughing. Nothing inappropriate, but Rowan's reaction was extreme. He waited until I got home and started yelling the moment I walked through the door. Thankfully, Sally was upstairs doing homework and didn't hear most of it. He accused me of betraying Julie's memory. He said 2 years wasn't enough time to mourn and that I was being selfish thinking about dating. He brought up how Julie and I were married for 8 years, asking how I could replace her so easily. When I tried explaining that I wasn't replacing anyone, he wouldn't listen. The argument got worse when he started bringing up Sally. He said I was confusing her by introducing another woman into her life. He claimed Sally wasn't ready for this change and that I was putting my happiness above her well-being. This hurt because I've always put Sally first. I wouldn't have started dating if I thought it would harm her. Last week, I finally gathered the courage to politely ask Rowan to move back to his house. I sat him down after Sally went to bed and explained that while I appreciated his help over the past months, it was time for both of us to move forward with our lives. I mentioned how his house was sitting empty and his old friends kept asking about him. His reaction was completely unexpected. He refused outright, saying Sally needed him now more than ever. He said I clearly couldn't make good decisions for her if I was already replacing her mother with her teacher. He brought up everything he's done for us, taking care of the house, helping with Sally, maintaining the garden. According to him, I was being ungrateful and selfish. Then yesterday, Brittany called me crying. She revealed something that made my blood boil. Rowan had shown up at her classroom during lunch break. He cornered her when no other teachers were around and warned her to stay away from me and Sally. He said she would never replace Julie and that she had no right to try to become Sally's mother. But what truly crossed the line was when he threatened to report her to the school board for inappropriate conduct if she continued seeing me. He said it was inappropriate for a teacher to date a student's parent and that he would make sure everyone knew about it. Brittany was terrified. She loves her job and has worked hard to build her reputation as a teacher. What made everything infinitely worse was discovering what Rowan had been telling Sally. My daughter came to me last night, crying and confused. She asked if I didn't love her mommy anymore because I was spending time with Ms. Brittany. She said Grandpa told her that if I started dating Brittany, it meant I was forgetting about Julie. He had been filling my 6-year-old's head with these thoughts, making her question her father's love for her mother. He took advantage of a child's grief and confusion to manipulate her emotions. This was no longer about grief or loneliness, this was calculated emotional manipulation. I confronted Rowan about manipulating Sally and threatening Brittany. His response showed no remorse. He said he was protecting Julie's memory and his granddaughter's well-being. When I pointed out how his actions were hurting Sally, he accused me of using my daughter as an excuse to justify my selfish behavior. I'm at my wit's end. Rowan has crossed lines that can't be uncrossed. He's not just interfering in my life anymore, he's actively trying to sabotage any chance I have at moving forward. He's manipulating my daughter and threatening someone I care about. This isn't about grief anymore, it's about control. I've tried being patient and understanding, but I can't let this continue. I need to protect my daughter from this toxic behavior and stand up for my right to find happiness again. I'm considering legal options now because asking nicely clearly isn't working. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Update 2: After Rowan's behavior towards Brittany and Sally, I knew I had to take serious action. I contacted several lawyers and finally found one who specializes in tenant rights. The lawyer explained that since Rowan had been living in my house for 6 months without any formal agreement or rent payment, he was technically considered a month-to-month tenant. This meant I had legal grounds to ask him to leave. Last Monday, I served Rowan with a formal 30-day notice to vacate. I placed the document on the kitchen counter where he would see it and sent a copy through certified mail as my lawyer advised. His response was to ignore it completely. He took the paper, glanced at it, and went about his day like nothing had changed. The next day, he started calling various family members. He told them I was trying to keep him from his granddaughter, leaving out the part about threatening Brittany or manipulating Sally. Soon, I started getting angry calls from Julie's aunts and cousins. They couldn't believe I was throwing out a grieving father from his only connection to his daughter. When the first week passed and Rowan showed no signs of preparing to move, my lawyer suggested documenting everything. I started keeping detailed records of his behavior. I had already saved all the credit card statements showing his unauthorized purchases, totaling over $15,000 in the past 3 months. Brittany provided a written statement about his threats at school, including the date and time of the incident. The most disturbing evidence came from Sally's iPad. She had accidentally recorded a conversation where Rowan was telling her that I didn't love Julie anymore and that Brittany was trying to steal her away from her real mom. Hearing my daughter cry and ask if that was true broke my heart all over again. When the 30 days were up, Rowan still refused to leave. He was still in the house, acting like the eviction notice never happened. He stopped speaking to me entirely but continued his attempts to influence Sally against me and Brittany. He would make comments within Sally's earshot about how some people forget their loved ones too quickly. I had to file for a formal eviction through the court. The court date is set for next week. My lawyer says we have a strong case, especially with all the documentation of his behavior. The unauthorized spending, the threats to Brittany, and his recorded attempts to manipulate Sally all work in our favor. To make matters worse, Rowan started inviting his friends over to our house, probably trying to establish some sort of community presence. They would sit in our living room, drinking coffee and discussing how ungrateful I was being. They would deliberately speak loudly enough for me to hear, talking about how Julie would be disappointed in my behavior. Yesterday, I found Rowan going through my home office. He claimed he was looking for some old photos of Julie, but I found him reading through my personal documents. When I confronted him, he said as Julie's father, he had a right to know what was happening in her daughter's life. I've started locking my bedroom and home office doors. I've also changed all my passwords and secured my important documents. It feels surreal having to take these precautions in my own home, but I can't trust him anymore. Sally is confused by all the tension in the house. She asked me yesterday why Grandpa and I don't talk anymore. I tried explaining in terms a 6-year-old could understand, that sometimes adults need space from each other, just like how she sometimes needs space from her friends at school when they disagree. The court date can't come soon enough. Living under the same roof with someone who actively works against you is exhausting. I hate that it had to come to legal action, but Rowan left me no choice. His behavior has gone far beyond grief. This is about control and manipulation. I just want my house back. I want Sally to be able to grow up in a peaceful environment. I want to be able to move forward with my life without constant guilt trips and manipulation. The lawyer says the eviction process should be straightforward, but dealing with the emotional aftermath will be the real challenge. Update 3: The eviction process is finally over. After the court hearing, Rowan was given 1 week to move out. He tried arguing that he had established residency and had nowhere else to go, but the judge wasn't sympathetic, especially after seeing evidence of his behavior and considering he had his own house. Moving day was difficult. Rowan refused to pack until the last minute, probably hoping I would change my mind. When he realized I was serious, he started packing, making sure to be as disruptive as possible. He took items that weren't his, claiming Julie had given them to him years ago. I had to carefully document everything he took to avoid future issues. His friends showed up to help him move, all giving me disapproving looks. They made comments about how they never thought I would do this to family. None of them knew about his threats to Brittany or his manipulation of Sally. To them, I was just a heartless son-in-law throwing out his grieving father-in-law. Since moving back to his house, Rowan has been telling everyone his version of events. According to him, I chose my new girlfriend over family and threw him out on the street. He conveniently leaves out how he threatened Brittany at school or tried to turn Sally against me. Some family members have taken his side, sending me angry messages about respecting elders and caring for family. Sally is doing better now that she's had some counseling sessions. Her school counselor helped her understand that loving Brittany doesn't mean forgetting her mom. She still misses having her grandfather around, but she's more relaxed now that the constant tension is gone. She's back to her cheerful self, drawing pictures and telling stories about her day at school. Brittany and I are still together, taking things slow for Sally's sake. She's been amazing through all of this, understanding the complicated situation and never pushing for more than we're ready for. She and Sally have maintained a good teacher-student relationship at school, keeping things professional despite our personal connection. Rowan still tries to contact Sally through other family members. He sends gifts and messages about how much he misses her and how sad he is that her dad won't let him see her. I've decided to limit his access to Sally until he can respect boundaries and stop trying to manipulate her emotions. It's not an easy decision, but it's necessary for Sally's emotional well-being. Some family members think I'm being too harsh, that I should forgive Rowan because he's grieving. But they didn't see how his behavior affected Sally, how confused and upset she was by his constant manipulation. They didn't experience his attempts to control every aspect of our lives or his threats towards Brittany. Last week, I received a long email from Rowan, asking to be part of Sally's life again. He said he's realized some of his actions were wrong, but still maintained that everything he did was out of love for Julie and Sally. He didn't acknowledge threatening Brittany or manipulating Sally. Until he can take real responsibility for his actions, I can't risk letting him back into our lives. I don't regret my decisions. While I understand Rowan's grief, his behavior was harmful to both me and Sally. Sometimes protecting your child means making difficult choices, even if they hurt other people you care about. We're finally finding our peace, and I intend to keep it that way.